If you don't have enough enzymatic function, you will set up the conditions for SIBO, SIFO, overgrowth, dysbiotic issues, micronutrient loss, macronutrient loss.
Yep.
So like if you're like super into protein and muscle right now and you haven't
Huge.
optimized for your stomach and your enzymes, you're just wasting all of that effort every day because a lot of that protein might just be going right through you.
When it comes to improving the health of your gut, or just even understanding why your gut is malfunctioning in the first place, looking online can be quite confusing and daunting. There are some practitioners that say you need to avoid fiber or carbohydrates entirely. There are some practitioners that say the only way to fix your gut is to get some very expensive functional medicine testing. There are some practitioners that give you a killing protocol to get rid of all the bad stuff in your gut. And all of this, while some of it might have utility, is misguided and doesn't actually get to the root cause of why your gut is not able to digest, absorb, and use the nutrients and minerals you're eating in the first place. So today's guest, Steve Wright, and I are really going to dig deeper into this conversation and talk about the very basic functions of the gut that need to be addressed before you go down these other rabbit holes, and why we find that most people can avoid those other rabbit holes entirely when you take a more holistic approach to supporting the functions of the gut. Now, Steve is a returning guest. We have an entire playlist on YouTube where we talk more about his story. We talk about hormones. We talk about histamines. We have a whole entire playlist. I'll make sure to link that in the show notes if this conversation is interesting to you. Steve also has a company where they do free consultations, and he does have products that I have been using for the last 4 years, myself and my family, and stand behind them. They also do a money-back guarantee if for any reason these do not work for you, which is another reason why these are the ones I recommend to my clients. So make sure you head down to the show notes, check out all of those links, follow Steve, and stay tuned. We are likely going to do a part 2 where we talk more about these topics. So I hope you enjoy today's show. Again, remember to head down to the show notes. There'll be some discount links for you to check out and more information if you want to learn more. A lot of people are quick to talk about the benefits of sunlight, but what gets often missed in the conversation is the benefit of darkness and the importance of protecting yourself from blue and green light after sunset. That is why I choose Viva Rays as my go-to source for protecting my circadian rhythms. You can use the code YOGI to save 15% off at Viva Rays. Now, you may have seen some of these studies popping up. I call them fear-mongering about blue blockers not being effective. And that is a partial truth, because when you use blue blockers that are clear or that have not been tested with a spectrometer to actually block what they say they do, they will not protect your circadian rhythms. And they are not catching those key wavelengths that you need to be blocking in order for your body to be able to repair, for you to make melatonin, which is a master antioxidant. And artificial light at night has been in the scientific literature extensively linked to a host of hormonal cancers, obesity, diabetes, and all sorts of metabolic issues. That, again, is why I choose Viva Rays as my go-to source for protecting my circadian rhythms to allow my body to get adequate darkness at night. You can use the code YOGI to save 15% over at Viva Rays, and you can actually trust that they block the frequencies of light that they say they do. Thanks to Viva Rays for sponsoring today's podcast. So as much as we try, there's one thing in life that's inevitable, and that is getting older. Now, I will be 46 in June, and along this process, I'm always looking for low risk, low tox ways of improving my skin health, feeling my best. So the Bond Charge red light face mask is one thing that I use and absolutely love. I've measured the EMF, it's very low, and they actually use specific wavelengths that are meant to improve skin health. So it's not just a willy-nilly, let's randomly choose a couple wavelengths of light. They've actually targeted the wavelengths that particularly impact skin health. If you go to bondcharge.com, you can type in the code Sarah Kleiner and get an exclusive Evolving Wellness podcast listener discount on the face mask. There's also a link down in the show notes for you as well. But I've definitely noticed firmer skin, less fine lines, and overall energy, because red light therapy has a systemic benefit on your entire body, even if you're just targeting your face. So if you're interested in low risk, low tox ways of improving your skin health, check out the Bond Charge face mask and use code Sarah Kleiner at checkout. It's bondcharge.com. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited to have my friend and returning guest here. Actually, I have a whole playlist over on YouTube of Steve Wright, but it's been about a year since he's been here. And I consider Steve to be honestly one of the world's experts on gut health. Like, he really has it simplified, easy to understand. And I always love talking to Steve. So welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. It's wonderful to be back.
Yeah, it's great. And I have tried some different things. We were talking about this before I hit record. I've tried some different things over the last year, different products. I won't name any names. And yeah, I always come back to Healthy Gut, and they are, a little more pricey than the things I was trying this year, but they pay for themselves, honestly. And I think that so many people trying to change their diet, as I mentioned, start to have these gut issues. And I'm always like sending them to our playlist, sending them to our conversations. So I'm excited to see what we talk about today.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, our products aren't for everyone. We're definitely, health has to be your number one value, and you got to be focused on this because we do put a lot of time, effort, science, licensing agreements, a lot of stuff goes into our products. But I don't, I love making the best stuff in the world, and that's what we're dedicated to. Because I was the person who changed diets like 30 times, and I was the person chasing my tail. And then I've been for 15 years, a guy trying to help other people with their issues and when they go through diet change. And I think what one like belief or one way that you and I really align is like, in a way, food is not medicine. Food is powerful. Food is food. But like how your food interacts with your body is actually what is the quote unquote medicine or the magic or that's what really matters. And so you can grow your own kale, you can pray on it every day, you can massage it, you can hand line catch your salmon. But if your circadian rhythms are messed up, if your gut if your gut organs literally cannot produce the products they need to produce, then that, $50 worth of food is going to make you feel bad. It's going to cause all kinds of issues, and it's not the food's fault.
Yeah. And when I found your products, when I found you in particular, you were on somebody else's podcast, I was in a spot, I've been talking more about it lately. I had been doing carnivore for about 2 years, and I was having major infertility issues. I was just having pregnancy loss. And I knew like, I have to start eating some different foods. This diet is not helping my fertility. It's not helping my thyroid. Yes, it helped get rid of the IBS issues. It helped my eczema go away. It helped so many other things. And so that's why I'm not somebody who dogs on the carnivore diet and says no one should ever do it. But for a lot of women in particular that I work with, it doesn't matter how high fat they go, how they try to tweak the diet with electrolytes, minerals, high fat, low fat, fasting, no fasting. Eventually, I have a lot of people who start to have the issues with the thyroid, the issues with the hormones. And that's where I was at. And I found you, I listened to you on a podcast, and I was like, I'm going to get this guy on a podcast because he really knows what he's talking about, and I need help. And so for me, even though I had been carnivore for 2 years, I had low stomach acid, and my digestive, my enzymatic function was low. And so when I started to transition off of carnivore, and I recommend this for a lot of people transitioning off of carnivore, is to add in those supports. And, my success story is that I don't have to I still use the enzymes, like, honestly, because because we just went through the holidays and I enjoyed some foods that, are not.
Yeah, of course.
They're not seasonal or local, but I enjoyed the hell out of them. And those holozyme, I'm telling you, they're just amazing. They just help. So yeah, I that's how I found you. And then I started sharing your work and a lot of this information with my community. And I've gotten so many success stories. And the thing that I really love about you, Steve, and what you do is that you have a money back guarantee with these products because like we mentioned, they're not like the cheapest thing. But if people they're not helping, they can get their money back and send them back. And I've never seen a company that does that with this sort of a product. And so that is one thing that I always tell people, I'm like, look, I think you probably are not breaking down the nutrients from your food. You're eating all this great food. You're not getting the benefits of it because you have low stomach acid and or your body's not making the enzymes needed to digest this food. And those two things right there could be what's going on with all your gut issues in the first place. Now, we may need to go further, but these two things are so incredibly important. If you're going to spend all this money on your diet and focus on it, they're basic. So I have had so many success stories within my community over the last few years here, because I think it was the beginning of 2021 that we first met. So almost 4 years ago. So yeah, it's really good.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. And, I'm just happy that it's helped you and the community. I mean, that is what it's about. It was my issues to begin with. I will probably always need gut support my entire life just due to, you can listen to some stories about me on other shows that Sarah and I have done together. But
you had it pretty bad though. I mean, let's just qualify that. Like you would be on public transportation and be in a questionable situation. Yeah.
Yeah. I have lots of embarrassing stories, whether it's, farting that wasn't a fart on public transportation or getting called in my boss's office. Yeah. Farts you can't trust, almost getting, my job was threatened due to stinking up the office. I'm missing dates because I was on the toilet all night, but that was just like the focus of my initial day-to-day pain. The stuff that I didn't understand was like how my cystic acne into adulthood was connected to my gut, how my exercise-induced asthma was connected, how my eye health was connected, how my anxiety, depression was connected. And as I continued to heal all these different components, and it wasn't just gut health, but there was other things I had to unpack and deal with. But it was wild how quickly things began to resolve themselves the more I got my gut to just function correctly. And I think that's like the first, that's the first principles thinking that I've kind of come back to all these years later is like, it doesn't matter. I know vegan is like a swear word on this show, but it doesn't matter if you're vegan or carnivore. I think both those populations love trying to focus on their health and the environment. They have different points of view, but both populations struggle just as much with low stomach acid and low enzymatic function. And they keep searching and searching for ways to help themselves, never questioning, is it the body? Is the body unable to actually perform the duty I'm asking it versus is it this food that is the issue? And so I think that's what my message these days is like, we're never going to get rid of all the toxins in the world. We're never going to get rid of the glyphosate. We're never going to get rid of the blue light. We can do a lot of things to mitigate that damage, but we should be focused on how do we build resilient bodies that are capable of dealing with this world that we've created. And just the foundational basics are, if you don't have enough stomach acid, the research shows you're going to have chronic inflammation every single day. It doesn't matter how much other stuff you do. You will literally have chronic inflammation every day. If you don't have enough enzymatic function, you will set up the conditions for SIBO, SIFO, overgrowth, dysbiotic issues, micronutrient loss, macronutrient loss. So like if you're like super into protein and muscle right now, and you haven't optimized for your stomach enzyme and your stomach and your enzymes, like you're just wasting all of that effort every day because a lot of that protein might just be going right through you. And if we return to these basics, like you said, the cool thing is people do have breakthroughs that are like within a month, like things are totally changing for the better. They feel it, they notice it. It's experiential results.
Yep. Yeah. These questions, these issues are so common I did a reel on protein last summer that went super viral. I think it got like almost 4 million views. And the reel was me sitting in a chair, kind of just like staring off into space. And it was like, point of view, your client tells you she's been eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and all of a sudden she has major digestive issues, her stomach hurts, and she's gaining weight and she doesn't understand it. And my caption was basically explaining that this whole trend of eating tons and tons of protein, which is valuable for sure, is not going to work for a lot of people because they don't have the enzymatic function to handle all of that protein. They have low stomach acid and they have low enzymatic function. And I was like, wow, this reel really resonated with a lot of people. I just reposted it a month ago and it has almost 4 million views. So
Nice.
it goes to show you that everyone's talking about how important protein is, but nobody is talking about the issues that people start having when they try to start slamming the protein, because a lot of people really struggle with these issues of low stomach acid and low enzymatic function. Now, we can get into leaky gut a little bit later on, but these two things are, I would say, where to look first, right?
Yeah, I think so. They set up the conditions for all the other issues, right? So they set up more likelihood for you to have leaky gut, more likelihood for you to have other food intolerances, more likelihood of you having dysbiosis in your microbiome. So, people always ask me, where do I start? And if I was thinking from a first principles way of looking at the body, I would start here. This is where I would start. It is most of the time super unsexy to people. And so people often don't start here, and that's okay. But I would say that, like, if you had a gun to my head and you were like, what are you going to do to help this person? I would always check their stomach acid, because somewhere around 70 to 80% of the time, I'm going to find they have low acid. And immediately, if they correct that, they will be feeling better the next day. Or if they have low enzymatic function, you'll feel that the next day. You're not like waiting months for this to work. It literally is like, today you're like, this sucks. It's not working. And like tomorrow you're like, what is happening? This is nice.
Right. Exactly. I think that's what people are like, how long do I need to give this? And I'm like, you'll know pretty quickly if you are dosing yourself correctly. And you guys have the Facebook group where you have all these great dosing guides that really help people, which I always send people there. And you've got health coaches in there as well that are always answering questions. And I mean, it's a great setup, because I don't want to, this is not somewhere where I want to spend a bunch of time, nor do I want people to go out and get these GI maps and really expensive tests, because like, guess what's going to happen if you have low stomach acid and low enzymatic function? You could have a ton of things that come up on this test, because what does stomach acid do? It defends the stomach from potential pathogens, from parasites, from all these other things. Like, it's crucial. So if this is an issue for you and you try to keep doing parasite cleanses and you try to keep doing all these like supplement protocols, but you still have low stomach acid, it's like kind of pouring water into a bucket that's got a hole in the bottom, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of folks who've been in the gut world, like having digestive issues world for a long time, who've tried so many different types of elimination diets. They've tried so many different types of bone broths or probiotics or fermented whatever. And it's not that these tools they're not like bad.
Right.
It's just they made an assumption about their body, about their stomach, that it was capable, and it's not, and it needs help to remember how to be capable again. And when you do that, you set up the conditions for everything else to work better, because the stomach acid isn't just the defender of the GI tract from all these foreign potential invaders. It's also the defender of the GI tract as far as lipopolysaccharide toxins coming from your oral microbiome. Like, there's a human study on people with you want your stomach acid. This is where it gets really complex, and I think this is where people tune out. So please don't tune out. This is where people are like, I don't know about the stomach thing. But the pH of the stomach, you want the pH to be low, and that means it's very acidic. So you want it to be like 2 or less. And if it's higher, like 4 or higher, really bad things happen. So if you have low stomach acid, your pH will be higher. And the studies show you could have up to 2,000 times, not percent, times more inflammation on a daily basis just from your oral microbiome. And it's not like these people are like doing something wrong. It doesn't matter if you're using the best toothpaste, flossing, water picking, I don't even know, sunning your microbiome, like, or your oral microbiome. I don't know what you could think of, but like you will not get rid of the gram-negative bacteria that live in your mouth, and you will not stop swallowing those bacteria all day long, creating these LPS. But the body has a built-in defense mechanism, which is your stomach acid, except for if you're stressed, if you have micronutrient deficiencies, if you have like an H. pylori infection, if if there's a circadian mismatch, like all these things will slowly degrade your stomach's ability to build the acid and release the acid. And then you get into the situation where you're accidentally dumping the LPS toxins from your mouth, unbroken down, undenatured into your small intestine, and it overwhelms it. There is some cool stuff going in the small intestine to protect us there, but it's limited. The stomach's supposed to do its job. And the same is true for those with protein. They're cramming all the on carnivore, all the steak and the chicken and all that awesome stuff. What stomach acid does at a 3D level is it opens protein structures almost like a flower, almost like the sun opens a bud on a flower into all the petals. Stomach acid opens the protein structures so they lay out farther, and then that surface area expansion of the protein structures allows the enzymes to come in and break them from these really complex, gnarly looking things down into amino acids, down into peptides. And if you never get them broken down into amino acids or peptides, they literally cannot go into the body. Like the small intestine is almost like a cheesecloth. This is crazy oversimplification, but there's like almost a filter. And if the protein molecule is not small enough, it doesn't go through the small intestine. It's like not allowed. And so then it goes deeper into your body. You get all kinds of nasty putrefaction issues and fermentation issues with the protein. And you lost that macronutrient that you worked so hard to get. And so, yes, like if your stomach acid is optimized, literally everything is easier in your digestion. Everything is easier in your immune system. If you lose it, even 20%, 30%, that's just a burden that you're putting on the rest of your GI tract or the rest of your immune system.
Right. And you mentioned H. pylori. Is that something, I find if someone tries to take a bunch of stuff to wipe that out, it just comes back. So what's your view of H. pylori? Should that person avoid HCL? Would HCL be helpful? And obviously nothing that we're saying on the podcast is medical advice. This is all just for informational purposes only, but I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, there is one group of people who are absolutely contraindicated and should not take an HCL product, whether it's our HCL Guard or someone else's HCL product, and that's somebody with an active ulcer. So if you have an active ulcer, you're working with active gastritis that's on its way to becoming an ulcer, this is absolutely a no-go for you. You got to handle your mucosal membranes first. You got to handle your hormones that are contributing to that first, and then you can work on your stomach acid. But for everybody else, I think it's a yes product. Personally, I'm of the point of view, like I said earlier, I want to be the most resilient being body possible. And I want to be the least inhabitable option for H. pylori or for some sort of bacteria or virus or whatever is. There's even mold. Like I'm walking through life being exposed to all these things every single day. I can't stop it. I want to be uninhabitable. I don't want them to think that this body is like easy to jump into and take hold. And so in the H. pylori world, there has been a focus on reducing acid in order to kill it. And I think that's a really poor approach to it. And I've done it successfully myself using HCL products. I've seen many other functional doctors do it very successfully. I think what people get extraordinarily wrong about H. pylori eradication in their programs is H. pylori builds really awesome biofilms. And so if you bring in biofilm disruptors at the same time you boost the HCL content, you are creating a very unlikely place for H. pylori to live. Like it needs low acid. The H. pylori will get killed by the acid if it gets too much acidity in there. That's why it actually like grabs onto us and then it turns off the pumps that pump out the acid around it. So the H. pylori is slowing down the acid production around it so it can live. But if you break that biofilm up and then you bring the acid up, you're making it a very uninhabitable place for H. pylori. And so I think that's the key where a lot of H. pylori programs go wrong.
Yep, I agree. Yeah. And so again, starting with the basics, and just before we maybe move to enzymes, why would somebody have low stomach acid? I always am like, why is the body down regulating this, or why doesn't it have enough? And second part of that, if they start to support their body with HCL, will they always have to? Is this, for me, it was temporary. For me, it was like a few months and I'm done. But yeah, those questions.
Yeah. So, well, last thing first, most people it's temporary, but it totally depends on your age and the amount of sort of destruction that's happened to your body. So as we age, especially 60, 70, 80, like, let's be absolutely clear. Starting at 35, it's not just your ovaries, your testes, your eyeballs that are starting to get a little tired. Your digestive organs are aging just same speed as everything else. So the gut really starts to break down in the 60 and up. But like, if you already lived a very stressful very
life,
unhealthy experience, there's no shortage of research and data showing that those of us, I think we're very similar in age, us elder millennials that are entering our 40s here, we are experiencing conditions and issues that was normal for 50-year-olds to experience. So it's like speeding up. So I'm not saying that if you're below 60, you're fine, but in general, that's when things break down even faster. So like, most people are on it for a year-ish. It takes them a while. And the reason why is, number one, there's a huge micronutrient issue related to building stomach acid. You need zinc, you need minerals, and so you need B vitamins. And when these slowly, basically, let's say you're losing like 30 or 40% of your nutrition every single day because you're unoptimized with your stomach and your enzymes, you can develop these micronutrient deficiencies. And yes, we try to replete those with supplements or a great diet or whatever. And yes, that happens, but it takes a while for all the pathways to, get filled back up. And it takes a while for everything to start functioning correctly. There's also sort of like some of us believe this. I believe this to be true. There's almost like a learned helplessness in the stomach as well. Like your stomach gets higher and higher in pH, which means low stomach acid. So It gets kind of lazy, or it gets used to operating inefficiently, and your body builds mechanisms to help that throughout. And so part of supplementing is retraining that. And that's why I think most people get off. So why does this happen in the first place? I would say the first reason why is stress, and nobody wants to hear that. And so we don't talk about stress no more. We say, you are sympathetic dominant.
Yeah.
We don't say stress. We say you're sympathetic dominant. But parasympathetic tone, and another way to say that in my world is vagal tone. Another way to track that in my world is HRV. The lower your HRV, the lower your vagal tone, the worse your parasympathetic strength of your nervous system, capacity, basically, the worse your stomach acid production is going to be. And the reason why is that the way we actually are supposed to eat, the way the whole thing works optimally, because I know you're all about optimalness, is you're actually supposed to smell your food.
Oh yeah, there's
quite a bit.
That's why the fast food is such an issue, because you're preparing your digestion. You smell it, you're around it, like you're chopping it, you're cooking it, but people are just like ordering Uber Eats and sitting down to eat. They haven't prepared. So there's I forget what the name of it is.
It's I think it's olfactory.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are missing that step, and they've been missing that step for years and years and years. So that is one reason it downregulates, right?
Totally. And so you have to kind of reboot that part of
Mm-hmm.
it. But then you also have to like, optimally speaking, while we were cooking and smelling all these smells, we would be down regulating from the day, hopefully, and triggering more parasympathetic tone. Because when we're in sympathetic version of our nervous system, we literally cannot create the stomach acid we need to. We actually need the nervous system to switch over to parasympathetic, which is also called rest and digest.
Yes.
So when that switch over, now you can biohack that with, like, say, the Huberman 3 breath thing where you do the triple inhale. You can hack that through saying prayers that you actually feel, gratitudes that you feel. Like, that's another way to kind of work with the modern world. But if you're not figuring out how to slow down, smell things, your stomach's always going to be behind the 8 ball when it comes to you starting to feed yourself.
Yep. Exactly. So that's, I mean, big reason why people are low on stomach acid is nervous system dysregulation, stress, and then we're not going through the motions that we're supposed to prepare our food, to sit down and relax. I mean, that's, I think, old traditions of praying before a meal, relax, giving thanks, saying grace. Those have utility for the digestive system as much as they do the ritual, the whole religious aspect of it as well. So yeah, that's a big issue for people, and getting people to slow down is tough.
It is. I struggle with it. I'm not perfect. Yeah.
I can tell right away when I get a new community member or when I'm doing a consultation, just from talking with somebody, and I'm not meaning this to be condescending. I know it because I it's like, you spot it, you got it kind of thing. But I can tell in the first 5 minutes of talking with someone in a consultation or even on my group that I'm like, there's a nervous system dysregulation piece here, big time, that's contributing to the gut issues, the hormone issues, the sleep issues, the whole cascade of all these issues. There's this piece that's, it's got to be addressed. But in the meantime, HCL could really be helpful, right?
Yeah. HCL Guard could totally be the thing that helps you develop more capacity to work on your nervous system. Because that's the thing. People get really bent up about what's the most important thing for me to do right now. And I'm like, look, a lot of people need more capacity. Like, it's hard to do behavior change. It's hard to do, if you've always lived your life in a stressed state, it's going to take you a while to unwind and figure out why and develop new habits. If you've always lived your life not cooking your own food, not being in relation to the sun, it's going to take you a while to build these skills. And so anything you can do in the meantime that, number one, contributes to the entire body's health and well-being, and number two, builds that capacity in some way, like in this way, we're talking about like actual physical capacity, then like that's like a no-brainer to me. That's where, I get upset about certain types of Band-Aid uses of supplements or even pharmaceuticals versus others. Because I'm like, in one, you're creating a dependency that you're going to have to unwind later.
Right.
And in another one, you're creating a better body that is still kind of a Band-Aid in a way, but there's no dependency and it kind of unwinds itself as you heal.
And that's the thing. I think that's really key for anyone listening, and how I work with clients and people is I'm like, look, we may need to add this in for a bit of time, and you have to do that. You have to do the work behind the scenes. You can't just take the supplement and expect to come off of it at any time if you're not doing the groundwork of the circadian health, the nutrition, the nervous system regulation piece. Like, you can take all these supplements and they might help you for a period of time, but you're going to be chained to them and dependent on them, or you may not get optimal results. And so I think, I'm not somebody who recommends doing a ton of supplementation, who loves supplements, but this is one area where I'm like, we have to help you here, because being able to break down, absorb, digest the nutrition from your food is primary in your health. And so this is where I usually I'm like, You got to do an HCL challenge. We need to know if you have low stomach acid. And then there's likely going to be an issue with enzymatic function as well. For me, it was like I hadn't had carbohydrates in 2 years. So I had like no lipase, period. There's just like, it wasn't there. And so I find people going from carnivore ketogenic diets long-term, because I get a lot of those folks, their body can't digest the carbs. They can't digest the fiber. And they're like, oh, fiber's not for me. I'm like, no, that's not what that means. It's not evil. It's not bad. We need to help your body be able to, our bodies were built to digest this.
Totally. Well, I want to give listeners a few things about stomach acid that are like you're interpreting your body's signals wrong. And then let's flip to the enzymes. Because I spent, the majority of my career has been helping women. Like men are just denser. We just don't seek help as good as women do. And, it is what it is. It is a gender thing.
And women are usually helping their partners too.
Right, right. Women are doing a lot more in the family system than the men are in this regard. So I would have these conversations and they'd be like, you know what? I get really excited when I smell steak or when I go to a restaurant and I want to order it, but I know if I order it, I'm going to feel terrible later. It's going to sit like inside me.
Mm-hmm. That's when I hear that, I'm like, stomach acid.
Yep. That's like 1,000% you have low stomach acid.
Yeah.
Some people will say I burp a lot after meals. That's why I don't eat chicken or I don't eat as much meat. I can only have, half of a chicken breast or something. Burping after meals is a great, again, almost 100% accuracy. You have low stomach acid. Mm-hmm. What's happening is like if you left a kombucha in your car in summer, the food is sitting in your stomach, fermenting. And fermentation creates pressure through the gas. The gas has got to go somewhere. The easiest way is not down to the toilet. The easiest way is up through your mouth. Mm-hmm. So anybody who's having burping, heartburn can be related to it. It's not as much of a complete red flag there. It is associated. But those folks who really want more meat or struggle to eat it and it feels like it sits forever or they burp a lot, those are just, I'm like, ding, 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 this product's for you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I get that. That's as soon as I hear that from someone, I'm like, yep, probably low stomach acid. That's where we need to start. And then flipping to enzymes, how would somebody know if enzymes might need to be used?
Well, you said it really well there. If you have a carbohydrate or a plant-related digestion issue, you have an enzyme problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why? There's a few others. So another one would be if you see pieces of food in the toilet that still look like the food you ate, that's usually an enzyme problem. If you see oily toilet, literally there's a sheen on the toilet water, that's usually a fat digestion problem. Yeah. So these are symptoms. Bloating.
Amylase was the carbohydrate one. I said that wrong earlier. I just caught myself.
Yeah. Amylase is carbs.
Lipase is for fat. Yes. Yeah, totally. So anybody listening is like, no, Sarah, that's wrong. Sorry. Just caught myself.
I knew you'd get it. So circling back, yes, there's plenty of people with lipase and fat-related issues. They might even know it. They just struggle with loose stools a lot of the time. Yes. Things are a little, sloppy or whatever down there. It's usually that can be a fat-related digestion issue. Carbohydrates and plant matter in general are just extraordinarily more complex than fat. Fat's the easiest. Protein's next most difficult. But all carbohydrate structures and plant structures are just legitimately much more complex to deal with. And so we actually have a bunch of enzymes that are set up to work on them. It's not just pancreatic enzymes. You actually have enzymes in your mouth, amylase in your mouth. You have pancreatic enzymes, and then you have all these brush border enzymes, and then you even have microbiome produced enzymes. And that's to deal with the fibers and the polyphenols and all the really cool structures that people either love or hate these days. there is a system set up for that. But yes, the pancreatic enzymes can get low, and that there can be an issue around delivery. But also, if the stomach acid is wrong, you set up the wrong pH for them to work, and the whole timing of your digestion is wrong. So people who are struggling with timing of digestion, meaning literally like loose stools or stuck stools, you're more likely to have a stomach acid issue. But you're also likely with the stomach acid issue to create pancreatic enzyme issues because the pH is wrong for those enzymes to work. If you have inflammation in your small intestine, you have little hairs in there. It's like this crazy organ. Like seriously, the small intestine is so underrated. The small intestine has all these little hair projections, villi, to create this enormous like football field worth of surface area to get all the nutrients out of your food. Those villi are the ones that are supposed to be releasing the brush border enzymes. And in general, brush border enzymes deal with a lot of the people's complaints when it comes to food. They deal with histamine, with diamine oxidase. It deals with lactose intolerance that people swear they have. And it deals with the breakdown of more sugar molecules. And so if you have a mild amount of inflammation, you're not going to have these brush border enzymes to be able to break down the carbohydrate complexes. And so you're going to blame FODMAPs. You're going to blame lactose. You're going to blame histamine producing foods.
Yes.
When it's just a deficiency of the enzyme needed due to inflammation. And if you have celiac disease, the gold standard definition diagnosis of celiac is your villi are like cut down to nothing. Like they're blunted, they're gone. Celiacs have extraordinary difficulty with carbohydrates. That's why there's literally diets called the specific carbohydrate diet that was developed for celiacs in the 20s.
Yep.
It's because that whole diet is around trying to protect against brush border enzyme issues. They didn't know that's what they did, but that's what they literally did. And so people who struggle with these things, they start to get really into this type of diet. It makes me feel better. If I avoid these certain foods, I feel better. I'm not someone who tolerates fiber. I don't tolerate histamine. It's like, well, the current condition of your body is that you're correct on your current condition, but it's not like your body was born this way.
Right. Yeah. Our bodies weren't, I always have to ask the question, why? Because I get a lot of that, I used to get a lot more of it when I was posting more about carnivore diet back in another lifetime, of the histamine issues, like huge issues with histamine. I'm like, we got to look at your gut. Because once you address the gut, a lot of the times the histamine is not such a big issue because of what you just mentioned. And so that's a really big piece for people. And I know
it's huge.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we shouldn't be blaming the foods. I get all these, carnivore experts, God bless them. I think some of them are trying to help people. Some of them are just like mean and trying to like upset people. Not many. There's only like a couple that do that. Most of them I think are trying to really, really help people. But your body should be able to digest fiber. Your body should be able to, that's how we were built. That's how we were designed. And instead of blaming the food and saying the food is trying to kill you, the food is bad, you need to ask, why is my body unable to handle this food? And I get it. Like I used to be, before I did carnivore, that was why I did carnivore, because I decided I would I'll never forget it. I'm going to make a healthy lentil soup. I'm going to do a lentil soup, like cleanse and just like feel better. And man, that messed up my stomach so bad that I was like, screw this. I'm doing carnivore. Like I felt better quickly, like really quickly. I was like, oh my gosh, why have I not been doing this my whole life? But there comes a point where one system is happy, other systems not so happy. And for me, that's when I had to look deeper than just, maybe it's not about just taking these foods out and blaming the foods. Maybe I need to understand why my body is unable to tolerate these foods, because that's not really an enjoyable way to live life. I know there's people out there like, I haven't had carbs and I don't need them, and I just think it's stupid. Well, good for you. That's not the majority of people that I've worked with or talked to. Most people don't feel that way. If you do, good for you. But it's thousands of
Well,
people
yeah,
I've
and
talked to, they don't want to live their life that way, honestly.
yeah, it's really hard to be socially. It's hard to be at social events. It's hard to be at family
Right.
events. Like people think of food in, well, some people get really myopic about food,
Mhm.
like macronutrients, micronutrients, anti-nutrients, toxins. Like food is an emotional experience. Food
Definitely.
is a social experience. There are you talked about how over the holidays you might have had some foods that were unoptimized. Well,
Right.
guess what? There are studies around people eating like junk foods, but in a high emotional state, meaning they're like not worried about it. They're with people they love, they're
Mhm.
vibing it high, and their digestion and tolerance of those foods goes through the roof.
Yeah.
And so the idea that food is just toxins and nutrients and macronutrients is crazy. It is an
This
emotional experience, a social
biochemical
experience.
model. Yeah, exactly.
I think it could be a spiritual experience,
Definitely.
depending on how good the chef is.
Yeah. Well, the body
So
isn't this biochemical system that we think it is. I mean, this now we're kind of getting into quantum biology in the realm of how we don't understand resonance in the body. And resonance is, again, the environment, the people, the heightened emotional state that you're in. And I'm definitely, and I know you're not saying go eat crap, go eat junk food, go to McDonald's, go to eat fat, go eat this junk food. We're definitely not saying that at all. But what we are saying is that every now and then you should be able to enjoy yourself, have a really fun time, and not pay for it, for days on end with horrible digestion, bloating, all the, loose stools, all the things like that I used to, because I don't
yes.
anymore. So,
And I guess what I would say is my goal for people would be to be able to do it like you do it, where I would say even in the natural health world, most people don't want to admit this, but I think it's 1,000% true. They just don't want to talk about it.
people don't
People are
tell you
still
what
walking
they're
around with
eating.
Tylenol in their purse. They're still walking around with ibuprofen in their purse. And
Yeah.
guess what? I have them in my house because if things get really bad, I know how to use that a few times a year.
Right. You're
Well,
not
if
using it daily, weekly, monthly, like there's a line sometimes where we do have to use these things,
it's a
it's,
tool,
it's a
it's a
tool.
tool. And
Yeah.
so
But you don't abuse
should you
it.
get to a place where your health is amazing and you want to go have some wine and cheese with your girlfriends, you just know, hey, I'm going to take some Holozyme. I'm going to take some HCL for that night. And I'm
Yeah.
just going to carry it with me. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to worry about it because then I don't pay the price for the next week. And so
Hmm.
that's where I want people to go is like, let's elevate grandma's medicine cabinet to like the biohacker medicine
All the
cabinet
time.
where you know how to use tools that
Hmm.
can help you just go have some more fun in case, you're getting low in the social amount of
Right.
nutrients.
Yeah. And times when, I mean, my life can be so super stressful. Those are the times when I'm like, I'm under a ridiculous amount of stress right now. I do probably need a little bit of digestive support because my body's not able to do its job because I know when I've slipped into a sympathetic dominant state. I know when I'm there and I'm like, yeah, I need to pull out the digestive support. So part of my medicine cabinet, if you will, is definitely always keeping HCL, always keeping enzymes on hand. um, we didn't get into butyrate as much, and I know we don't have as much time, so we might have to do a part two to this. But I'll just say personal experience. My daughter had to be on antibiotics for a really, really nasty sinus infection, which we found out was because she stuffed something in her nose.
Oh, yikes.
So all the antibiotics in the world is not going to get rid of that. So her gut was wrecked. And to the point of like literal incontinence, where I was keeping her home from school. Like, I'm like, I can't send her to school like this, like, because I can't expect someone else to take care of her. She's 17. And so that I got the butyrate and we started because you have to be with your butyrate. It's like literally the most powerful butyrate. I've tried other ones on the market, very slow dosing with her. And within a couple of days, fine. Like her gut was better. Um, that stuff is super powerful for leaky gut and for antibiotic recovery. And again, even with people with histamine issues, maybe we can again do a longer episode on it. But that the leaky gut also comes into play as well in the whole conversation, I think, and can maybe even be the icing on the cake for people who are still struggling once they've supported these other things, or they've been on antibiotics and they're experiencing major gut issues afterwards.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy that you figured that thing out with your daughter. And yes, our butyrate is unlike any other butyrate on the market. It's not the same, and
Mm-mm.
we're proud of that. But you do need to know how to use it. That's like just like if I'm gonna go out and have sugar cookies with gluten in them, which I did over the holidays, I'm not gonna take two whole enzymes. I'm gonna take six
Yeah, I
because
saw.
I know what I'm
Same.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, knowing about your supplements and knowing about your products so that when life happens,
Hmm.
we're like the idea that I'm gonna make it every decade without being exposed to antibiotics, I think is I don't know, it's just a silly place to think about. Like
Hmm.
I don't live in a bubble. I go hunting,
Right.
I do dumb things where I get cut. Like there's chances I'll get an infection. And I'm not
Hmm.
gonna be like, well, I can't take these antibiotics because it'll hurt my gut. And then I'm gonna die because, I'm gonna take the antibiotics. Things happen. And so having tools in your house to help yourself or your family members through that phase of
Hmm.
life, I think is what I hope that people will come to, where you can pull out the Tributylin X and be like, hey, let's use this. And so, yeah, butyrate is powerful. I would say even butyrate is the thing. The reason why people say eat your vegetables, it's actually because of the
The
butyrate.
butyrate. And you can't do that with eating butter, so don't even go there in the
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah. You don't understand the
There
stomach
you
acid thing we just talked about if you're
correct.
if you're stuck there. Yeah, so I mean, the gut is this extraordinary world. It's this
Yeah.
deep world with all these complexities, and they're all interrelated. So when you improve, say, your stomach acid, you improve your enzyme function, you improve the likelihood you don't have leaky gut. Or if you do have leaky gut, you reduce the amount of toxins that are entering your body. So they're
Yeah.
all kind of like there's like no wrong way to do this unless you're still thinking, oh, I need bone broth and probiotics, then you're doing it wrong.
Right.
If you're stuck in that world of the gut, you missed the memo. And I know the whole world told you to do that for the last 5 years. I'm sorry about that. They don't get
Well,
it.
truth of the matter is, if somebody has a histamine issue and you try to, they do most bone broths, unless it's like a meat stock and they're doing GAPS diet, they could like feel even worse from
Oh,
that. And
totally.
probiotics, same. I've seen people take probiotics and get even more messed up because they already have dysbiosis, they have leaky gut, and now they're trying to throw another form of bacteria in there for the body to handle. And it's like, this is not what we need, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
probiotics, you got to be careful with them. They really do hurt a lot of people because there's a lot
Agree.
of terrible formulas out there.
Yeah.
People just trying to make money or people who have good intentions, but like don't care about the science or something. I don't really know. But like, I would say 70% of the probiotic marketplace is like more likely to harm than help. But there are 30% of products out there that are like really well researched. But the
Yeah.
problem is people want to use them as first line or even second line therapies for the gut, and they shouldn't be. They should be introduced later. They should be like the fourth or fifth or
Yeah.
sixth thing you try, and that actually helps create a resilient body later.
Hmm.
Like once you've kind of restored your health up to a certain level, then introducing probiotics and fermented foods when you can tolerate it and it can like really get in there and work with your microbiome and it can really have a dramatic effect. But
Oh,
if you
yeah.
introduced it below a line of tolerance, you'll be chasing your tail for another 3 months, being like, why is this not working?
Yeah, that was another thing with me wanting to do carnivores. I remember getting some sauerkraut that was like this really nice, high quality sauerkraut from my local health food store, locally made. I literally looked 6 months pregnant for a couple of days and was so uncomfortable. I mean, it was just awful. And I'm like, I thought this was going to help my gut. And it was just completely the opposite reaction. Um, the lentils and the sauerkraut. I have bad memories of both.
Sorry, it's not the food's fault.
No, because now I eat those things. Actually, I don't eat lentils. I just that I don't know. I still don't really eat lentils. I'm sorry for all the bean lovers out there. It just doesn't, yeah, no. But I will eat my fermented foods, my kombucha, sauerkraut, all the things. Love it. Works great. So yeah, I mean, I think this conversation for people, if they're like, I'm struggling with my gut. Where do I start? Just to sum up, we would probably start with the stomach acid, unless you have an ulcer or gastritis. And again, this is not medical advice. Then consider enzymes, and then possibly look at something like butyrate if you've got leaky gut and or histamine issues. That could be helpful. And we can do another episode on that at a later date, because I know you've got some other supports as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, this is a sort of a pitch for my products, and I am obviously super biased. But like, if you're like, hey, I already tried enzymes, they didn't work for me. I already tried HCL, it didn't work for me. I already tried butyrate, it didn't work for me. I think Sarah can say it best, but literally you can read the comments on our site. Everybody's saying I've tried other products in this category and yours work differently. And so I would hope that you would try ours. If they don't work, great. That's why we have the money back policy. That's why we have health coaches, US based, highly trained. Some of them, two of them are almost PhDs that you can pick up the phone and end up on the phone with them today and ask your questions, because I know that's what matters. Getting the right dosage and the right product really matters.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, but that I've really been enjoying sending people to the Healthy Gut web. I'm like, go get a consultation, because you guys do free consultation. You'll tell people, you'll help them. They don't have to go most of the time order a really expensive gut health test. Usually give them something a lot more simple to start with. And in the functional, like alternative medicine world, that's kind of unheard of, to be honest with you. Everyone's all about the testing and you got to kill this and do that. I'm like, no, let's look at it from supporting the body's functions first, before you jump down that rabbit hole of trying to kill everything off. And you might be pleasantly surprised at your body's ability to heal and regenerate and come back to function. So, it's a lot more in alignment with the way I work. And I love what you do. If anyone's listening, I will have the links obviously down in the show notes for all the stuff. But Steve, like, you have a course now. Like, where can people find you if they're just driving down the road listening?
Yeah, well, check out the course notes and everything. There'll be a coupon code there for you to try things. Just go to healthygut.com. From there, you can bounce around. We have some courses if you want to get extraordinarily nerdy on this stuff. You want actual protocols that go way more than what we just talked about. If you want to know the science or the practicality behind the stuff, we do have courses. And of course we have the social channels and all that stuff. But I think the easiest place is just go to healthygut.com and check it out from there. And if you're overwhelmed, confused, our phones are open on Mountain Standard Time from 9 to 5 during the week. We all have lives. We're all trying to be healthy as well. So we're not 24/7, but please call us, ask your questions, try to get your help.
I love that. And yeah, I don't talk about a lot of supplements on the show really, because I don't believe people need to be on a ton of them. But the fact that you guys do the money back guarantee and you have a phone where someone can actually talk to someone and you're there to be helpful, I appreciate that. And I feel like you do things with integrity. You do things the right way and with the spirit of actually wanting to help people. So I appreciate you, Steve, and all that you do. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. Just a quick little reminder, this is not medical advice nor meant to be taken as a substitute for working one-on-one with a healthcare practitioner. And if you enjoy the show, please head on over to Apple or Spotify to leave the show up to a 5-star review. If you're over on YouTube, please leave us a like, leave us a comment. I really appreciate you for being here, for listening to the show, and your support means the world to me as I continue to try to pull guests from around the world to bring you informative content to empower you to make decisions about your own health. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.